চেক চেক চেক, এটা ছাড়া নেই। এই মাইকটা কি ওখানে দেওয়া আছে, জুমে দেওয়া আছে? চেক 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 চেক, না অডিও আসছে না। চেক চেক চেক, হ্যাঁ এই এলো। চেক চেক চেক।
हेलो
হ্যাঁ ওটা দিয়ে দাও, দিয়ে দাও। এখানে ছাড়বো না, এখানে ছাড়ো, দাও এখানে ছাড়ো।
हेलो मिस्टर माधव का की एम आई ऑडिबल
Very light. I mean, like, volume is too little.
हेलो मिस्टर शरीफ दिस इज प्रद्युत
Yes,
Yes.
I could hear you, but it's not like very clear.
ऑलराइट इज इट नाउ क्लियर
It's much better. Yes, it's okay now.
ऑलराइट मिस्टर माधव का की कैन यू हियर मी
Yeah, I can hear you clear.
ऑलराइट सर so we'll begin in now is 2:35 so we'll begin in few like 10-20 minutes
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we.
Then we'll wait.
Yeah, let's wait.
hello, 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 hello. Hello, 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 check, hello, 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 hello. Hello, check. One, two. নেই তো কিছু। Hello.
ওটাতে নয়, ওটাতে নয়, ওটাতে নয়, এমনি হচ্ছে। পেছনে যান, একটু বাইরে যান। এইখানে না না, ওখানে ঘষলে হচ্ছে। না না, ঘষলে হচ্ছে না, আমি দেখলাম তো, আমি বলছি না, ঘষলাম যখন হচ্ছে বডি। ছেড়ে দে, এটা বেশি এ করিস না। এটা কার নিপুণ মাল? দিয়ে দাও। একটা মাল ভালো বেরিয়েছে। একটা এটা দেখো, দুটো সমান বাজছে কিনা।
Ladies and gentlemen, kindly take your seats. We are about to begin with our next session. Shall I start?
That you have to say that the audience should go, some of them should go for the screening in the other room, the Velvet Lounge.
बोलना है नहीं बोलना है?
इधर जब हो जाएगा एक तो पैनल इधर और पैनल उधर चलेगा ना, so there will be somebody holding the
I'm
placard.
starting. Should I start?
You say hello.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin with our post-lunch session, which is on climate and ecology. In this, we will begin with the cultural presentation, EcoFlow, Ripples of Life and Hope. It is being presented by artists of India and Malaysia. The production is a triumph of innovation that dissolves borders for artistic collaboration between urban and rural artists. The piece draws from the narrative of dry waste that makes us responsible as humans to foster our own doom. The costume for this piece is created from upcycled waste material and tailor discards, living the philosophy of the piece that talks about sustainability through dance. Chau artists from Purulia have collaborated with contemporary dancers from Malaysia. A critique of inhuman treatment of nature and natural resources and the impending loom of a deadly end to our beautiful world as we know it. The piece tries to reimagine the lost world where there was a comprehensive relationship between nature and humanity. The message of the production is directly talking about the menace of plastic pollutions in transboundary rivers and oceans. So please enjoy the presentation on climate and ecology, EcoFlow, Ripples of Life and Hope. Ladies and gentlemen, culture reflects life. This was about how we can, through our own actions, harm the ecology, the system. And we've just received news that there was an earthquake in Indonesia, Java Island, leaving 44 dead as of now. So this just reiterates what we have been talking about. We offer our condolences to all affected by this. And to felicitate the artists, I request Mr. Adrian Pratt, Director, American Center, to kindly come on the stage, and I request all the artists of EcoFlow, Ripples of Life and Hope, to kindly come on the stage as well. Please come on. Come on stage. आप लोग आइए please, shawl लेकर. You should be coming first. Big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, to all the artists. I request Mr. Sudarshan Chakrabarti, who is the director of this production, Sapphire, to also come on the stage. I request the Malaysian director, Mr. Raziman, to please come on stage. He's the director from Malaysia and the director from India. I know. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to tell you that we have two parallel sessions now. One is in this hall and the other in the Velvet Lounge. We have a documentary screening. The documentary is on climate change and is titled Tide is Rising, a climate tale from Bangladesh. The filmmaker is Rizwan Shehryar Sumit from Bangladesh. So those of you who wish to watch the documentary can proceed to Velvet Lounge. Meanwhile, we'll continue with the discussion here. Conversation is on saving shared rivers of the region. The session aims to discuss ways to conserve, restore, and sustain the shared rivers and waters and the linked ecosystem entities in the Bay of Bengal and the larger Indo-Pacific region, with particular emphasis on plastic pollution against the backdrop of climate change. Moderating this session will be Mr. Sabyasachi Datta, Executive Director of Asian Confluence. Our speakers for this session are Medha Bisht, Associate Professor, Department of International Relations, South Asian University, India, and Norbu Wangri, Coordinator, Royal Society for Protection of Nature, Bhutan. I request the Chair and the speakers to kindly come on the stage. Joining us online is Mr. Madhav Karki, Advisor on Climate Change to the Prime Minister of Nepal. He will be joining us by virtual mode. Also joining us online are Shamir Shaheb, Founder and Trustee, Bangladesh Youth Environmental Initiative, and Mr. Sharif Jamil, General Secretary, Bangladesh. So I request Sabyasachi ji to kindly start the session and take over the proceedings. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and this is a session post-lunch. Sometimes lunch sessions after lunch can be pretty challenging, but we were, I think, all our sensibilities have been awakened due to the performance that we just witnessed. And I'd like to take a minute of your silence to pay homage to our friends in Indonesia who have lost families, and so may I request everybody just for a minute of silence. If you like, you can stand in respect to the victims of the earthquake. Thank you. My co-panelists and some of our co-panelists who are joining us online, warm welcome to all of you. We are joined by Mr. Madhav Karki from Nepal. Mr. Karki, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear
us?
loud and clear.
Okay.
Thank you.
And my friend Sharif from Bangladesh, and Shamir.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Can you hear us, see us?
It's all
Yes.
good.
Thank you. May I request a little that graphic to be shown on the stage? Yeah. You know, I wanted to draw your attention to this art which is from Orissa. It is actually depicts the marriage of the fish from the sea and the fish from the river. So this connection between river and sea has been an age-old tradition. We, in this part of the world, today we are represented in this panel from Bangladesh, Nepal, India, Bhutan, what we call the BBIN region. Our region is interlaced with so many rivers. From the mountains of the Himalayas, they originate and they form the central core area of what we call the Ganga, Brahmaputra, Meghna basin. And they all flow into the Bay of Bengal. These rivers have shaped our ecology, our topology, our lifestyle, our culture, our trades. And as today somebody pointed out in an earlier panel, we still do not have much of a discourse on how do we go about saving these rivers, which have severe challenges. Whether it is at the mountains, I'm sure Bhutan and Nepal would share their challenges, whether it is at the estuary, or whether it is in the ocean, which is now getting full of plastic waste and other wastes. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a serious problem here. And how are we going to have dialogues that take this forward towards some kind of a solution? And as the cultural presentation just said, there is no plan B. So, I would like to start with you, Medha. You work on hydrodiplomacy, international relations, culture. Can you share very briefly, as I start this conversation, to share some inputs and insights on how do you see the discourse of cooperation for saving these rivers and the waters moving forward?
Thank you, Sabir. I think this has been a very interesting and a very reflective morning for all of us. When you talk about perhaps put hydrodiplomacy and culture in one frame, I think it's best to start from how we define diplomacy. And diplomacy is generally defined as the art of conducting international relations through negotiations. I would say that this is a rather parochial, limited definition, and we need to, transpose, or we need to replace the word negotiations with communication. And communication, both verbal and non-verbal communication. So when it really comes to, I think, culture and hydrodiplomacy and trying to take things forward, then hydrodiplomacy then becomes really an art of conducting international relations through non-verbal communication, and here culture becomes, or plays, in fact, a very important role. Now, I think this definition really has a huge significance for South Asia, and I'd say that for two reasons. And also, I would say when we're talking about the Indo-Pacific. The first reason is that when we think about South Asia, it's got two selves. It's got a geostrategic self and it's got a cultural self. Geostrategic self, because we all burdened with Curzonian vocabularies of buffers and frontiers, which has had a huge impact on the way the foreign policies are conducted. And the cultural self, of course, are these overlapping cultural past. So the challenge is that how do we reconcile the strategic self with the cultural self, and which are in a way incommensurable to a certain extent. And it's here, I would say, that rivers and culture become very important, and let me explain how. I say this with full conviction because the narratives of people who actually work on rivers and culture, are poets, our poets, I would say, like Tagore, like Nazrul Islam, our singers like Farida Parvez or Bhupen Hazarika, are, these, the folk traditions which we have, the Bhatiali songs and the Bhavaiya songs in South Asia. Now, when you look at these narratives, these are very different from the strategic narratives because the people, the ecology, and the rivers are really central to the analysis, to their description, to their worldview. And I think when we talk about culture and hydrodiplomacy, we need to get them up front because this will again help in two ways. Perhaps it will help us to move from this whole idea of political community to water community, which I think is extremely important in South Asia. And also if you look at the cultural practices in South Asia, for instance, look at the songs by Bhupen Hazarika on the Brahmaputra, who's translated songs in, sung songs in Bengali, in Assamese, in Hindi. Yeah. And this really has a very relational impact on the people, because what you're essentially doing is that you are using multi-vocality to make the idea of rivers more relational, more inclusive. And I think culture here, if it really comes to the forefront, then you give voice not only to humans, but also to non-humans.
Yeah, thank you, Medha. I think that's an ideal segue for me to go to Madhav Karki, who's joining us from in Kathmandu. Madhavji, South Asian rivers are hydrologically connected, of course, but we are politically disconnected. And, the cultural significance of these South Asian rivers are widely recognized, as Medha just said, and shared across the region. But this importance of this river as one entity moving, which cannot be divided, is not so prevalent, maybe at the political level. Would you like to say something on that? I know that you're also advising the government and just getting into an election mode, so please comment.
First of all, thank you for having me, and thank you for the opportunity. I think you have asked a very, very pertinent question in the context of today's discourse on river ecology. You mentioned, and my previous panelist also mentioned, that the culture is a very, art and culture, I think, play a very important role in our, I would say, in our water management. I would like to say that actually a lot of human relations in South Asia has been shaped, I think, in relation to our water management. Specifically, I would like to say that we think value rivers not only for its economic benefits, but its spiritual and its, I would say, non-material benefits. So the ecosystem services which we say our common rivers provide are valued across the regions. And that's why I think we say that culturally and I would say hydrologically, we are very much connected. As you saw in the performance, I think this is art and cultural behaviors have been passed on from one generation to another, and this is why I think we respect our rivers and we worship our rivers. But I think this connection has been rightly, you have also mentioned in your introductory note, have been have been broken because of these political divisions. And this is why I think we need to reimagine, I would say, connect the countries, especially the BVIN countries in the Eastern Gangetic Plains, to to manage our rivers in the context of climate change. I just came from Egypt, where we had a COP27, which recognized the vulnerability of the crash pair, which means the source of the fresh water. We also call it third pole, which have been highly impacted by climate change. So I would like to say that culture and art, I think, can be a very strong foundation for making these connections. I think we need to go beyond economic benefits, which politicians recognize that these rivers provide. We need to highlight the non-material benefits, I would say the intrinsic benefits which our rivers provide. And to do that, I again reflect my observation and learning from ASEAN countries where you have this Mekong River Commission, which is managed by several ASEAN countries, and the start, I think, the strength of this commission's success, or the Mekong River Commission's success in forging regional cooperation, has been based on the strengthening and highlighting of the cultural and social pillar. And the way they do is they organize a lot of festivals centered on rivers, which I think enlightens and influences the politicians and policymakers to recognize this connection. And
I'll just interrupt you.
Just two more sentences.
Yeah.
And the framework in which these connections can be made is the river basin concept, integrated river basin management, wherein we bring all the stakeholders from the source to the, I would say, from the Himalayas, from the source of the river to the ocean, to the coastal regions, and make them participate in managing the river in an ecologically sound and economically, I would say, beneficial and culturally sensitive manner.
Right. I think you've really given a great cue. You talked about river basin management. And of course, at COP, it was acknowledged that we need to move from pledge to action. I think at the root of action is the role of people, communities, who are on the basin, who inhabit. I want to now go to Sharif Bhai, who's in Bangladesh. And can you share a few instances of your work, for example, in the communities that you are doing as part of the Bangladesh Paribohan Andolan, to sensitize communities about what is needed ground up for actual action?
Thank you, Savia. Is that audible?
Yes, you're audible, please.
First of all, I'm missing the in-person meeting there.
We're missing you too.
Yeah, but the reason I couldn't come is a meeting just going on,
Thanks
so
to
it's
technology.
still conflicting. So I'll be very brief, and I will seek apology from you to leave the meeting earlier. Sure. But I'm very impressed by the structure of the panelists and the way you are going forward with the discussion. It would be my pleasure if I could stay full time. It is very important to understand the community perspectives and community situation at the current circumstances we have in our coast. But to understand it, let me inform you about the current status from the legacy it has been carrying forward since this government took power in 2009. Government, when it took power, it is their third tenure, but when they started their first term in 2009, they envisioned this country for its economic growth. And to grow economically, they thought about industrialization. And for industrialization, you need, transportation, communication, raw materials, all these are very important. So if you check the long-term visions and plans and policies of the government, that all are focusing on the coast of the Bay of Bengal in Bangladesh. So here we come with the pertinence with our discussion. I don't know how long, Savia, you want me to...
No, I would request you to make a short intervention of maybe 2 to 3 minutes on what you see on the community, and then I'll come back to you after a little bit.
Okay, it's all mess going on because
Yeah.
the plan is inadequate. It is not science-based. It doesn't have enough data when the plan was being adopted, and when the implementation is going on, there is no governance, no accountability, and no public perception and people's contribution to the policy formation and implementation level. That's why there are problems happening at mass level at the ground. As for example, for facilitating the industrialization in Rampal hub and Rampal area, it needs Poshur River to be dredged, and the port authority needs to dump the dredged spoil somewhere. And they selected a 3-time yielding cropland where densely populated villagers are living there. So there is a big clash between port and the villagers of the village where they are supposed to dump the dredged spoil. Now hundreds and thousands of women are protesting the government to dump the dredged spoil there. So government cannot dredge the river, and when the dredging is not done, then the industrial equipments are not there, so the factories are not, industries are not being, commissioned or in a proper way. So there is one way the displacements are going on for not necessarily climate change. It's for the wrongly implementation of industrialization plan, and it's just an example. So this kind of displacements are happening now in the coastal area where there is a big clash between community and the government initiatives. I would like to stop here. I'm not sure if I could answer your question.
Yeah, I think I'll now ask Norbu. You have been working with the community in Bhutan. And can you share with us, as a mountainous country, what are the challenges that you see in the way the community perceives the river and the way that the initiatives being taken by the government in Bhutan for saving the rivers? And there's a lot being done, I know. How that is panning out, how community participation is helping the efforts, basically.
Good afternoon once again, everyone. I think first of all, thank you, Savia, for having me here. It's I think great pleasure to be among the eminent panelists. Of course, in Bhutan, I think as we already saw in the morning, that culture, I think, transcends boundaries. So in terms of rivers, or for that matter, water, I think it's been an integral part of Bhutanese culture and traditions. I think we have a strong belief of interconnectedness. I think I'm again very pleased at this moment by seeing that just a wean, I think a bottled water, all the way from Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan, I think to have a sip of Bhutanese pristine water, I think it's a tremendous, I think, message of how connected we are, not only in terms of through the rivers and the oceans, but I think in terms of drinking water also, potable water, we are all connected. So just straight away to the question, I think, Saveji, I think in terms of riverine ecosystem protection. I think we have been working with communities as part of the habitat restoration of some of the iconic critical endangered species, such as the white-bellied herons. I think we have only about 60 in the world right now. Only 60 individuals of white-bellied herons. And then our entry point for working with communities is through the species conservation. And we are trying to provide communities with core benefits of conservation, conserving these species. So there's a strong, I think, support from the communities for conserving the aquatic habitats. And then we are also working with communities through the formation of local conservation support groups. So I think communities in general, I think they have a positive support towards any kind of initiatives, be it from the government as well as from the NGO sector. Yeah.
Thank you. I think I'll bring in Shamir Shihab from Bangladesh now. Shamir, you work a lot with youth. Tell us a little bit about your experiences on how you've been able to mobilize youth energy towards this. I mean, I know that there are challenges, but at the same time, I think in Bangladesh also there's lots happening on projects of conservation and saving rivers, water bodies. There's increasing awareness. As I've been watching this through our Nadi engagement for the last 5 years, and I see there's a definite up curve, a sharp up curve, I would say, in the level of awareness. Can you share a little bit about your work and also how you see the youth sentiments panning out in that direction and awareness of the youth in this direction?
No, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Shubhashachi and the Asian Conference team for having me in this forum, and it's an honor and privilege. I'll try to be very brief and short. I think the other co-panelist in this discussion, Mr. Sharif Jamil from General Secretary of BABA, summed it up very well, the challenges that is actually there. So these challenges actually affects the young people, and how that is so. So I think if you go to the coastal communities in Bangladesh right now, you will see that how access to natural resources, here we are particularly talking about the rivers, that is an water commons, how access to these water commons has reduced over the years. I mean, fishermen would previously get a chance to go and fish, but it's a complex discussion, the whole host of reasons, but now if, let's say, a son from the fisher folks family want to do fishing, want to live the livelihoods dependent on the fisheries, that option is not so much of there. So how young people is getting affected, I think the diagnosis of the problem is very, very crucial. Otherwise, we will keep doing stuff, getting the wrong medicine, and we're not going to solve the problem. And I think some of it actually alluded by Mr. Sharif Jamil as well. There's a lot of discussion about the climate change, but I myself find it very hard to attribute right now, right at this point, that to what extent climate change has contributed to the decreasing fishing resources, fisheries in my country. I don't see much of evidence of that. But rather what I see is the governance mechanism, the accountability mechanism, that is at the heart of the problem. And it is causing sufferings to the life and livelihoods, everyone. And this is affecting more so, particularly young people. So the reason I say it, because this understanding, diagnosis is very, very important. Shubhashachi, in the beginning of this panel, you set out the context you mentioned about the plastic pollution, right? So I hope you can hear me well. Okay, so where is this plastic coming from? The large majority of this plastic pollution is probably contributed by the industry sector in Bangladesh. And so you and I, in a very micro scale, that is important for behavioral change, I don't deny it, but it's important. But the large pollution of our rivers, plastic pollution and other pollution, is done by major industries. The reason behind it we have put the growth at the heart of everything. The entire political narrative is dominated by growth. The spiritual connection with river and cultural aspect of it, people's well-being is not at all into the equation. So I think that understanding is crucial. So I think the part of your question now, what young people perhaps is doing or could do, in my understanding of some of the work that we do, of course, education, awareness is absolutely necessary, but also that has to be in the consciousness level. By that I mean, just knowing about it, that plastic pollution is bad, but I keep consuming plastic, that means your awareness hasn't reached to the consciousness level. So one need to understand that the socio-political driver and the politics that is behind it, like for example, let's say the polythene bag is banned in Bangladesh, but if you go to the market, it's legally prohibited. You can't produce it, you can't sell it in the market, but it's widespread, it's available in the market. So I think what we have been trying through our programs here in Bangladesh to take this education and awareness to the consciousness level. That's first point. And the second point, I think just awareness, education. I mean, if young people's livelihood is becoming less and reduced, I think to tell them that we need to conserve environment, that romantic environmentalism is not going to work. So we really need to create livelihood opportunities for these young people who are being affected because of this mismanagement of our natural resources and so on. So that's where comes in, I think, green entrepreneurship, supporting young people, how the challenges that lies, especially like on the pollution front, can they come up with new ideas? How as an organization, entities, government, business, private sector can support those young people in incubating those ideas and supporting them so that they can scale up and have an impact. I hope I was able to respond to your question. Happy to take it.
Thank you, Shamir.
Xavier, may I get 3 minutes before I quit, because I need to attend also that meeting. Can you give me 3 minutes?
Okay, then I would ask you one question in follow-up.
Okay.
Specifically to what Shamir said, since what are the communities, Shamir talked about 2 points. One is about youth and plastic pollution, and the other is about livelihood, right?
Yes, yes.
Can you share specifically
yes.
about how aware, or what are, if at all, any projects that you are doing to make communities aware of the use of plastic, for example, about polluting our rivers, number one, and how that discourse is linked to what they're doing for their livelihood, actually?
Thank you. I will come to your question after adding some points on Shamir, and that is also was in your question. I'm giving you an example. There is another one industrial hub coming up in Paira, which is very close to, like at the middle part, just in the Meghna estuary. And all those industries are basically coming by Chinese influence. And at least 3 coal-based power plants are under construction on a river called Rabnabad. Now, Rabnabad is one of the 3 major fish migration routes to the country, mainland. You know Hilsa Ilis, the national fish of Bangladesh? In 2017, 38,000 metric ton of Hilsa were landed in merely Kolkata Upazila, where there are more than 3 under construction Chinese coal plants. So now you think about the fisher folks, you think about the middlemen, you think about the people in the market who are selling the fish. And this Ilish will not be coming anymore, because the Ilish is very pollution sensitive species. This is one example. It has relation with the livelihoods, it has relation with the economy and everything. But with the geopolitical thing that was there in the preamble that you sent to me, if you want to connect the Chinese influence of that plants, you can connect it with the Chinese mega project proposal for Tista River, which is in the northern part of the country. If you see, the very specific company, Power China, they are constructing the power plant in the Paira hub, And they have proposed the Tista River restoration project in Rangpur. So they have geopolitical objective, and that's why they are setting up the coal plants there. So there are livelihoods issue, there are sustainability issue, there are climate change issue, there are air pollution and other issue, there are geopolitical issue. So now how we are managing our rivers, you rightly said that government came up with many legal frameworks, many committees and many initiatives to save our river. But the problem is with the mindset, in the approach. What is your approach? Are you protecting the river with an ecological approach, or are you protecting the river with a commercial approach? If you go with the commercial approach, then you will see the river is a way of navigability only. You will dredge where the shipping can be done. But if you think about the ecology, then it's a coastal country. A river is not merely a river. It is together with other small rivers, canals, and other wetlands. And it has a big floodplain. It has a foreshore. So here we are making disaster for our country. And it should be addressed. And the mindset is very important. Another one thing, plastic pollution. He mentioned in 2002, Bangladesh banned plastic polythene. And Bangladesh is one of the pioneer countries who actually banned plastic, single-use plastic. But if you go to the river, we are working on the river pollution in Dhaka together with USAID. If you go our river, you will find more than 7 to 10 feet of plastic underneath the river. When the dredging, it was carried out by the Navy, I mean the Navy of the country to dredge the Kornofuli River in Chittagong, they could not dredge it because of the polythene and plastic underneath. So it is the governance, but not merely the governance. You need awareness, and you also need to make the alternatives available. Otherwise, people won't use it. So it needs a comprehensive plan of action that will have short-term, mid-term, and long-term projects and initiatives. But to adopt all of these things, we are missing two things. One, proper data backed by scientific research and study, and another one is people's participation in the process. So if we can do these things, and yes, of course, more than 50% people are youth, if you consider it in a broader scale, broader framework. So youth engagement is very important, and from the civil society platform we are working on, we already declared our youth platform very recently. So we will be organizing youth to come up to protect the environment and ecology of the country, because this country is created by the nature. You know, it's from the Ganges and Brahmaputra. It's the largest active delta in the world. So if we cannot protect the delta character, we cannot protect this country in a long run. And plastic is a very alarming thing. In 2021, World Bank actually said Bangladesh is one of the top plastic polluters to the global ocean. So, of course, and in Dhaka, annually per capita consumption of plastic is more than 22 kgs. It's probably 22.25 kgs. So, yes, we need to do that, but to do that, it's not like we need robust and rocket science. The discharge points we have towards our river are identified. We can just put nets on it and collect the solid waste from there and reuse it. We can stop using and production and marketing of plastics. This is one thing related to the governance and related to the availability of alternatives. But on the other hand, if you want to manage or protect the rivers from plastic pollution right now, you can regulate the discharge points to the river at this moment.
Thank you, Sharif bhai.
Thank you. If you excuse me, I also want to leave because.
Oh, you have to leave. Okay. We will miss you, but thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much. Thank you for shedding light on this issue of plastic, which actually, I'll come back to Medha. Can you, when you're talking about the Indo-Pacific, we're talking about being connected by shared waters. It's the ocean which is at the heart of the Indo-Pacific. We normally see oceans as dividers, but in this case, the ocean is the connector. it is connecting the lands. How, at an international level, how big is this problem of, how big, the problem is big, we all know that, but how much is the awareness of this issue of plastic pollution, both at the marine, at the estuary, at the river?
So thank you, Sabir, again for that. But I think, this whole idea or discourse of putting the rivers and the ocean is so very important because, you actually shift your gaze from a very land-centric understanding of South Asia to a very maritime-centric, because South Asia has another identity, and that is a deltaic identity. Moreover, when you talk about plastic, plastic is something which actually joins or stitches together terrestrial life and the aquatic life. Now, when it really comes to, I would say, some specific developments which have actually happened at the international level, of course, there is a lot of awareness. The normative framework is already there. It's really about sustainable human behavior, something which my co-panelists pointed out, and I think that really depends on our personal determination. But the first thing is the United Nations Convention on the Laws of Seas, has several articles in terms of preventing plastic pollution. Then I think there are international organizations, particularly IMO, UNEP, the FAO, which are very issue-based, and they also really talk about, fisheries management in particular. And I think this again is very, very important because we know they are migrating species, from the sea to the water. And, this itself, I think, is related to plastic contamination. There is, in fact, I think, a UN General Assembly resolution also which talks about plastic. Then, apart from this, there are many international frameworks, for instance, the CBD, the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Basel Convention. All these frameworks are there, which in fact talk about plastic contamination. But, or even the MARPOL, which is the legislative body in terms of monitoring plastic, pollution. So I think in terms of the mitigation approaches which we need to take, there are ample of frameworks there. The challenge is really the human beings and, the political economy, behind plastic. And I think there are ways to translate it, which my co-panelists have already pointed out. But I think, apart from all this, it just boils down to sustainable human behavior in terms of just being so aware of the own carbon footprint that you're leaving behind. I think that is where change begins, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Medha. I think, Norbu, Bhutan, we all view Bhutan as a country which has really gone ahead in a lot of new ways under His Majesty's, guidance, in new ideas, How are you seeing the Bhutanese society and the community being a uppermost riparian? But what you throw in the river, if at all any, does impact your own waters as well as downstream. How do you see this matter of plastic pollution panning out? Is it an issue at all in Bhutan, or is it something? Is it a challenge, or is it something we should learn from?
Thank you, Sabirji. I think definitely, I think plastic pollution, has become an issue in the recent times in Bhutan. Increasingly so because we are now, becoming a more consumeristic society, and as we are geared towards graduating from the LDC status, and then achieving far more socio-economic development, rapid economic development, urban areas are spawning like anything. So definitely, solid waste management is the issue. And then, of course, from there also plastics pollution, it's really an issue. If you span across all the major river basins, every nook and corner of the forests along the nature trails, you'll find plastics there. So definitely, plastic pollution is an issue, not only on inland, but also in terms of aquatic ecosystems. So definitely plastic pollution. But Bhutan, we have also taken some initiatives in terms of managing the waste in total. We have initiated this national flagship program on waste management. I think we are trying to change the mindset of waste segregation right from the home, so that to prevent pollution of our any environment within. So that's one initiative that we have taken. We are also trying to have green roads. I think trying to promote the use of 3 Rs. I think reduce, recycle, and reuse. Promoting green roads through plastic waste. I think resurfacing of the roads. I think in a way that also minimizes the emission of greenhouse gases and then reduce plastic pollution in general. Yeah, thank you.
I think, thank you, Nobu, for that. I think we need also sharing of best practices across the region on what we are doing right and what we are doing wrong, and where somebody's best practice can be shared, and sometimes, somebody's best practice could also be not a best practice for somebody else. So this kind of a sharing, I think, becomes very, very important, because we are basically one tight region connected by our rivers. And on that note, Madhavji, I would like to ask you, you referred to, I'll ask you 2 questions actually. You referred to learning from the ASEAN region, from the Mekong experience. And also we have our own experience in South Asia, which is still, I think, nascent in level of collaboration. But you, as the, advising political parties, how committed or how active is this discourse of talking about our shared rivers, shared waters, or even waters and rivers, and this issue of addressing climate action and its and the impact on water? How is that discourse panning out in Nepal? Can you share your perspectives in the political establishment?
Thank you very much for this question. As you know, river provides a lot of ecosystem goods and services. So for any political parties in any nation state, river, the water flow, I think power flows along with the water flows. So rivers are also a source of power. In Nepal, which has more than 6,000 rivers, river resources are, managing river resources are very, very critical, very important. As you know that Nepal is one of the richest countries in terms of the hydro electrical power potentials, which remains to be harnessed. So we are just beginning. I think Bhutan is ahead of us. But so far, most of the political parties has kind of shared their vision of prosperity, using economic sort of services of the rivers. But I think perhaps it is because of the climate change which has really heightened the concern of disaster among the policymakers and the public. The political parties in this national elections have all included the socially and environmentally sound management of our river resources, taking into consideration the climate change risks. So I feel that there has been a recognition now that we need to manage our river for water, for power, for other like forest resources in an environmentally sound manner. So that's the first point. But I think I wanted to, share with my other panelists that we talked of plastic pollution, and pollution is one of the 5 direct drivers of, climate drivers of change in our world. And this, in the context of the river, you can see that the plastics which we use in Nepal or Bhutan, in the upper riparian countries, I think they end up in the oceans, and then ocean plastic pollution is a very serious threat to the marine life and coastal livelihood. So definitely we have these common problems, and we have to find common solutions. And in our discussion, we feel that so at least, I mentioned that we should learn from ASEAN. We should also learn from European countries where they have a very successful management of Rhine River. European water framework is a very, I would say, very enlightened one. And I also like to say that this will, perhaps climate change has brought us to a stage where I think now there should be this awareness among our political leaders, and perhaps my colleague from the South Asian University can highlight on this enlightened water diplomacy or hydro diplomacy, because we need enlightened diplomats who can really engage policy makers across the countries. And the reason I'm saying that we cannot manage river in a kind of within the national boundary without having impact across the region. And that's why I mentioned to you that all over the world, the recognized model of managing river in an ecological and also economic sound manner, and social, also sound manner, is integrated river basin management. We have to take the entire basins from the shores. For example, if you consider glacier lake outburst floods, its impact will be the Gulf events in Nepal and Bhutan will have impact in Bangladesh and in India and Bangladesh. Similarly, we have the monsoon floods which inundates a large part of the lower basin countries. So we have to have this integrated river basin management. Our SARC model hasn't worked well, but we have the BBIN. Just a few years back, we had Bhutan Climate Summit where this river management was one of the component, and BBIN country perhaps work together to manage these shared rivers, wherein we manage to conserve our river ecology, to develop our economy, which is possible by going but not using water just as a service, I would say the essential service for our life, but also as an economic commodity, because it is producing the clean energy. And if you know that India's and Bangladesh power clean energy demand is just going to increase manyfold. India itself, I think the next 10 years it will grow 145%. So while there are problems, I see there are opportunities. Climate change has brought both problems and opportunities. We all have now made this net zero roadmap. India wants to be net zero by 2070. Nepal and Bangladesh and Bhutan is already net zero. We have a plan to be net zero by 2045. And for that you need non-fossil energy. And in India, they have committed, even in the recent climate change, they will phasing down coal energy. So we have this huge opportunity of using rivers as a source of energy, source of water, and this will be essential for economic development. So let's not look at river just for water. Let's look at river as a source of all the ecosystem goods and services which we need for our health, for our culture, for our economy, for our ecology. if you take this holistic view, then I think we can solve pollution, we can address climate change, we can address our poverty. So we need this holistic view.
Thank you.
And my discourse, we call it transformative, view, which means that we first have to change the behavior, change the mindset of all the stakeholders, utmost of the policymakers, and think regionally and act locally. And this is the way to succeed. World is in polycrisis, not only, I would say, triple crisis. We are in polycrisis, where the impact is more than the sum, which means if this climate change, pollution, then we have environment degradation, and then we have the other impact is the invasive alien species. And
thank you, Madhavji. I think you made a very important point, which is act.
So we need to. Last point would be
yeah.
Business as usual is not an option. We need transformative change in our behavior, in our education, in our regional cooperation. And for that, we need enlightened diplomacy, enlightened, I would say, diplomats who can work across the country, across the national boundary. This is how we can connect at least the BBIN, I would say politically, and build on hydrological and cultural connections. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you said several very enlightened thoughts. You said about think regional, act local. I'm not sure only diplomacy, how much it can do. I think it will need much more participation, political will. After all, diplomats are under the government.
I would like to say that the social and cultural foundation, I think, will cut.
Yes.
You see that we all worship Ganga. I think we got. Why not we connect? Build on that. And
of course.
Organize this event. Really highlighting this social strength, this cultural strength, which I think will follow the political, I would say, the actions.
Thank you so much. I think we have about a full 25 minutes for the audience to take some questions. Maybe I would ask the first question to start with you, Medha, and then I'd open it up, and then the audience, please feel free. And I'd request the audience also to come in with this question of mine and think about it. We are talking about reimagining and reconnect. Reimagining what? Reimagining our waters, reimagining our rivers, oceans. We need to reconceive how we are looking at it. And how do we connect to it at a deeper level? How do we feel for it? It's not just a commodity which we use it's there for our use rather, but it's a living entity. Water is our life. How much of an awareness is there? What can be done if you say you were to reimagine and reconnect at the diplomacy, hydro-diplomacy level? Give me a very short one-liner or two-liners about what can be done before we open it up for further questions from this audience.
I think, okay, maybe two sentences.
The
first is that when you're talking about reimagination and reconnecting, I think, Sabya, you've got a very beautiful concept today right here. And that is the concept of representation. So when diplomacy, in a way, is very central to representation. And when we are talking about diplomacy here, who are we really representing? Fine, we're representing interests. But I think through cultural performances like this, you're representing the interests of the non-human. It could be the ocean, it could be the mountain, it could be the fish, and there is where I think you start changing the discourse. Now, in terms of, I think in my own capacity, that's what your question was. I think, I have at various levels. I started with a think tank, which was under the Ministry of Defense, started working on water negotiations, and after a while I felt that, it's just about distributive bargaining strategies. You try to understand frameworks, you try to come out with some suggestions, doesn't really work. And I think after I joined the university at that level, what we've done, I think with Pakistan, there is one project which we did, which was to really take the case of the minor river, which was a transboundary river, River Ravi, in a way shifting the discourse from the major rivers, like the Ganges, the Brahmaputra, and the Indus, to these minor rivers, these streams, these rivulets, which I think are also very important. So in terms of the classroom and one-to-one engagement, what difference do you make? I think that's important. It doesn't matter if I'm sitting here, but I think when I'm in the classroom, when I'm talking to that single person in front of me, there is where I'm making a difference. Another, I think, thing which we've done with IUC, and Bangdi also was there, we in fact took a very critical take on hydrodiplomacy, not only defining it from political or legal lenses, but in fact talking about the cultural, the psychological, the gender aspects of it. The psychological aspects were just brought up when most of the panelists were in fact talking about changing mindsets. But I think it's one-to-one conversations where you make a change.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I'll come back to you, Norbu, with a similar question. What would you do if you wanted to reimagine and reconnect? And same for Shamir, but I'd now like to open it up to the audience here. If you have any question, the floor is open, is there any question? No hands up yet? Oh, there is? Okay. Kindly state your name and keep your question brief so we can take a few more questions, more than, yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm Niladri Chatterjee. I teach English at the University of Kolkata. My question would be, how much plastic pollution is this conference creating? Thank you.
It's a very good question. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm Melinda Pavic. I'm the U.S. Consul General here in Kolkata. I actually wanted to respond to your question, if that's okay.
Yes.
I wanted to respond with an example that I've been watching closely, but I have to admit I'm not sure where it's been in the last couple of months. And it's the example when we were talking about representation, the example of a Native American tribe in my own home state of Minnesota that has been, has wild rice that they grow, that grows wild in the waters of the lakes of Minnesota. And they have been, the amount of wild rice that grows has been diminishing very rapidly over the years. And a lot of that has to do with water pollution and changes in water temperature. And so that tribe is using some of the treaties that they have with the United States government and other entities and is representing wild rice as a plaintiff in a court case. That wild rice has the necessity to exist as a part of the culture of the indigenous tribe, and therefore it needs to be protected. Now, of course, that is still going through the court system, and it'll be very interesting to see how that use of a, essential cultural heritage is reflected or supported in human-made courts. So I just wanted to bring that as an example.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we have also a few cases where the river is in litigation because the river is a living entity per some court directives. And what we do to the river has legal repercussions, but it's a matter of also implementation of the law, And yeah, so that's, I think, a discourse I would really think we should take that forward, in reimagining and reconnecting. I'll take a few more comments from the floor before we come back to the panel, please. Yes?
Hi, I am Tamanna Maiti. For your question, sir, reimagining and reconnecting, I would like to reimagine the dynasty which was extended by Ashoka till Iran, and by the Chola dynasty to almost Southeast Asian countries. Like it almost covers Indo-Pacific region. To these borders, can we connect via, like we listen free trade agreement, as India is signing with various countries. Can we connect by free cultural agreement? Can we approach to government this kind of these things? Can we do that? And in case of sir, just few delegates from Bangladesh and Nepal also said that government accountability of government and mindset of people. It is very, very ironical that see, we have so much plastics in our table, so much toffees with plastics. So mindset need to be changed from ourselves only, no? And government, we should approach to government.
Right.
Pressurize them.
Right. Yes.
There is no denial of the fact that plastic is the most, what should I say, the efficient contributor as the polluter. I have no data with me, but simple one joke that just concluded this climate summit of the unit taken by the United Nations. The Coca-Cola, the biggest polluter, they sponsored the event. So this is, if you see, the way they actually, one side they are contributing, other side they are contributing for the pollution. Even if we go to the remote village, the people when receive us today, they don't offer, they offer the green coconut, but one bottle of Coca-Cola. When actually we meet in the meetings, actually there is a provision of glass of water, but only these bottles, as my young friend suggesting there. Even in the railway stations, there is no provision nowadays that drinking water is provided. Only we carry with us the plastic bottles. It is not happened in one day. Systematically, in a planned way, day after day, a situation has been created that the trust is gone and the people are depending only on the plastic bottle waters, carried bottles, not actually other. In our school days, we used to take the water from only the tube wells. But nowadays, even the guardians, they actually send their wards with a bottle of water. So systematically, it has been done.
Right.
So systematically, we had to undo it. That is in a planned way, first the awareness. And awareness not only from the government level, NGOs, social activists, everyone should jump upon. Otherwise, this problem will not be solved and this only data will be there. Then the rivers, riverines, etc. are polluted with the plastic bottles and then those animals, the fisheries, etc. everything, lives are jeopardized.
Sure.
That is the...
Thank you. Yeah, one more. Yeah, there's at the back. Please introduce yourself and make it brief, the question, please.
Thank you for acknowledging my presence. Good afternoon, plenipotentiaries of higher order. This is Anurag Ghosh. I'm a college freshman from St. Xavier's College, Kolkata. I would like to keep my question very laconic. Do you think that the acceptance of the general contrivance of water as a resource and an economics-oriented nomenclature the root cause of its exploitation? Although the question is very rudimentary, but I would like to have an expert opinion on that. Thank you.
No, it's not rudimentary at all, I think. Thank you for that question. I will actually, I think, first ask Norbu to respond to that question, and then we will go
thank you very much.
Along with it, Norbu, if you can also talk about how you would reimagine the discourse. Yes.
Thank you very much, I think, for the interesting questions. First of all, I think to the discourse on reimagining and reconnecting, I think I really feel that it's a self-retrospection of how you are connected with nature. I think how we have originated, no? what is our initial connection with nature? I think this discourse we must really look into, and then it is really our actions. I think we have the solutions right in front of us. If all individuals, as individuals, we act, then I think we'll be able to solve the solutions, the global issues. And then we are yet here, I think, waiting for all the developed countries to, find solutions for us. I think it's no time to wait. I think it's now time to act, I think, locally, even if it is a small act against solving miniature of the global grand challenges that we have. I think then we'll be able to achieve, as rightly mentioned by some, that as NGOs, as civil societies, as organizations, as government policy decision makers, if we all act as one, I think, and then try to reconnect with nature, I think that is the essence of all where our solutions lie. So I think, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. I will actually go back to Shamir now for, Shamir, would you like to, you heard a few sentiments expressed, few concerns expressed, and a question also from the audience. And also the US Consul General highlighted a case of the litigation about the grain of rice, and we know we have some cases in India about living rivers, you know. They are in the courts where rivers have been declared as living entities and they have a right to live. Can you share a few insights from Bangladesh and as part of your sort of Reimagine Reconnect comments for this panel?
Thank you very much, Shubha. Is that going to be my closing remark as well?
Yes, because we are also running short of time, so you can, yes. Thank you.
No, I'll try to be very short and on point. On the point of plastic pollution and the pollution this conference and other conferences that recently completed the COP, I think I very much agree in spirit with whoever was brave enough to raise that question. And see, that's the reason I'm not flown into the in their conference. I'm joining here virtually, so I hope I make my case. And but I think the last question, the young gentleman from the college that asked about, if I understood that question correctly, are we taking nature more from utilitarian sense? It's a tool for economic growth and so on. I think that, to me, in my personal opinion, I think that's where the problem lies. Even see how we talk about rivers and water in Bangladesh, we call it water resources. So the moment you call it water resources, you primarily thinking about it from a very economic perspective. And you are thinking about what utility you are going to get out of it and what's the best way to actually maximize it, even if it is for conservation. So in my very humble opinion, I think that's where the philosophical approach that we have in conserving nature, that's where the problem lies. Think about it. I think this pollution problem, this ecological environmental crisis, the climate crisis, heart of it is what? We are overshooting our planetary boundaries. The extent to which this planet can regenerate itself, can sustain and maintain the balance, we are consuming our resources in a way that is overshoot. That is half the problem. If my 2 shirts is good enough, I have having 10 shirts. I have 10 pants. I have 5 pairs of shoes. 1 running shoes, 1 party shoes, 1 going to conferences, 1 going to I don't know wherever. So that's where the fundamental problem. And if we do not realize that, I think I am very, very skeptical, no matter what solution. I mean, we are talking about transition to renewable energy, but renewable energy is going to create another set of problems, actually. Let's not go into discussions, but I think on your point on rethinking and reimagining, what I would say, we are primarily talking about saving our rivers, conserving our rivers, right? Make it pollution-free. So I think what I see in the conservation effort these days, two things is missing. One is human rights and justice is not at the center of it. So I may be doing conservation work that may be coming at the expenses of the basic fundamental rights of the communities, and I may be perpetuating injustice. A very quick example of it. let's say fish stock has gone down. I need to now put a ban or announce an marine protected area because I need to conserve fish. But what happens to the millions of people, thousands of communities, those who are dependent on those fisheries? So if I do not take their livelihoods, their rights into that equation, and number one, this is an injustice. Number two, these actually do not sustain in the long term. So just look at the evidences that we gathered in the past few decades where communities' voice in the design of conservation project, communities' participation in that project is not ensured. I hardly see that any conservation effort that has been successful to achieve the outcome in a sustainable manner that has actually improved the situation and affect their life positively. So in my rethinking and reimagining, I think the voice and participation of the communities where the projects is going to be, who are affected, is very fundamental and very crucial, and we need to make sure. And with that, if I get 30 seconds, I know many of the discussions what we have, what transpired here, by the time we go home, we just will forget. So one little exercise that I always do, people probably remember, if you can see me, those who are in the audience, if you can just follow me. I'm not sure if audience, sorry if I make you a bit uncomfortable.
We can see.
Okay, so see, I have taken my left hand over there, and then one finger I'm clapping, 2 finger right now, I'm clapping, 3 finger I'm clapping, 4 finger I'm clapping, 5 finger I'm clapping. So if you have clapped with me in the audience, you see, of course it starts with me. Maybe then to my family, then to my communities, then maybe the larger society. Once everyone joins, the changes, the desired future that we would like to see, I think that's very much possible. With that note, I would like to thank
you, Samir.
And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well appreciated, very much. Medha, would you like to react to especially what our young friend from St. Xavier's talked about and the issue of what the other sentiments expressed?
Yeah. So I think a very pertinent question, because frames are very important, because the frames which you have, through that you see the world. And when it really comes to water, water is not just a resource, it's a source of life. I think that's really the fundamental starting point through which we should start conversations. The second point, I guess, coming to this, to taking this further, so there are rationalistic ways of looking at water, and there are relationalistic ways. There are more relational ways and rational ways. Rational ways are primarily, okay, fine, we're talking about the way negotiations happen, we're talking about water in arithmetic terms, we're talking about rationality of water, quantity, water quantity, etc. But I think there was a very significant point which was in fact raised by Karkiji. And he said that we need to really move to this broad framework of IRBM. And IRBM, Integrated River Basin Management, is really a relational way of looking at water, where something happening high in the Hindu Kush Himalayas are definitely impacting the ocean down there. I mean, the fact that one scholar has called Bangladesh flattened Himalayas really talks about this relationality. So here the nature is telling us something. The nature is telling us that it's very, very relational, it's interconnected, and one disturbance there, say in the mangrove forest, or you actually plant mixed variety of trees there, you are disturbing the ecosystem there. And there is where I think that this whole idea of representation of the non-living, of the non-human become important. And this is where, going back to this whole question of recognizing them, the idea of living entity. I would just like to draw your attention to this Treaty of Waitangi, which was actually signed between New Zealand and Maoris. And this was supposed to be a relationship building treaty, which of course was criticized later, because the idea of relationship was not just between the Maoris and New Zealand, but it was really about the relationship with the earth, the soil. It was an entirely different cosmological vision. And there is where I think when we're talking about changing mindsets, we're not just talking about a universal understanding, but I think more about a more pluriversal understanding, which is a more relational, interdependent understanding of the world. And I think if you look at the South Asian intellectual legacies themselves, they in fact really talk about this dependent origination. And that is something we need to grasp, I think. Bhutan is in fact, a living example of this. If you want to know more about relational thinking, look at the gross national happiness of Bhutan, more in the philosophical manner and the Buddhist inspiration that it really gets. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you, Meera. I think we are out of time now. I'd just like to close this panel with a couple of thoughts. Firstly, I think we need a system approach to this issue. We have to see the big picture as well as the small picture. It's like a big system, it consists of little cogs. If I say that my car, if it's a system, if the carburetor is running okay or the car is okay, it's not okay, right? So we have to make a systemic view of this entire problem. I don't think there are enough discourses which looks at it as an entire system. In the system, it has to be incorporated, the role of government, the role of community, everybody, and a systemic solution. So this, I think, needs to be a point of study for researchers. And we were talking about research methodologies and pedagogy and also modus operandi of how advocacy is done, basically. And it's important to understand that everybody needs to understand the system. I really appreciate your criticism on the plastic bottles. As the ED of Asian Confluence, I take responsibility for it because we are one of the organizers. But at the same time, I would say that we are also victims of a system where, this is proliferating. So, well taken. I'm not shying away from your comment, but I think we need to think about it in various dimensions. If I stop today, but why is it not stopping everywhere? So this is the issue. That's one. Secondly, to your point,
can I have a few minutes also?
Pardon?
You missed, Mr. Datta. Can I have a few minutes? I think I was not given the opportunity.
Madhavji, very short.
Just give me 2 minutes.
Okay.
The first point I want to make about the utilitarian approach to water is that the economic value of water is given high priority, but not the other values, which are the intrinsic value, the spiritual value, the cultural value. I think those values have also to be counted. Then only water will be managed soundly. Now, the second point I wanted to make, in reaction to the comment from my American colleague, is that traditional institutions, traditional laws, and I would say traditional legal frameworks are very important for sound water management. In Nepal, we have many examples of the very successful community-based water management. And my final point is that you talked about system approach. Ecosystem, reimagining, reconnecting means living in harmony with nature, living within the environmental boundary, sustainably using natural resources. So reimagining means, reconnecting means, our ancestors used to respect nature. We should also respect nature. We should also follow the natural process and natural law. And this is why I said that if you want to manage river water, you have to manage from the peak to the coast, which is the integrated river basin management. So these are missed
Thank
out.
you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Madhavji. And I think that brings me to my last point, which is that when you look at the system, culture is a very, very important component of this system and the system we are in. This defines us. It defines our emotions. It defines our sensibilities. So on that context, using culture, not using, but I would say the medium of culture, respecting the medium of culture equally to as much as technology or science would be very helpful to address the issues. We are out of time. This is a very, very involved conversation, but I'm glad that we all could join in it, at least for some time, and hope that we can engage further. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your comments, and thanks to all our panelists. Thanks to technology for making it all happen, that you could join us from Bangladesh and Nepal. And we have a truly BBIN panel here right now. And my last recommendation is let BBIN take up this issue of, a joint basin approach to all our rivers. So thank you very much, and good evening. Have a good evening. Bye. Thank you.
But before we conclude, I'd like to request Mr. Sabyasachi Datta to kindly felicitate the panelists we have on stage.
Can't felicitate our online panelists. We'll send it to them.
No, we can just thank them and send their uttariyans to them. We have Medha Bisht and Norbu Wangri on the stage. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us. We hope to see you tomorrow for the sessions at 10 o'clock onwards. Thank you. Okay, before we take leave, ladies and gentlemen, this is to tell you that today at 6 p.m. we will have an evening of conversation, culture and cuisine featuring third space conversations, cultural program and food trails from the Indo-Pacific. So we hope to see you there as well. Thank you. Namaskar.